Meanwhile, a growing number of conservatives are urging President Trump to change his re-election strategy. Campaign guru Karl Rove writes in the Wall Street Journal, here's the quote, "The Trump campaign needs to hit reset. If the president won't offer voters an agenda for his second term, he may not get one." Karl Rove, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, now a Fox News contributor, joining us from Austin, Texas this holiday weekend. Good to see you, sir. Hopefully this would be a different kind of reset button than the one that Hillary Clinton gave the Russians back in the day. The question is, you got to reset to something. What is it?
Well, first of all, let's put it in context. When you're in the barrel, when you're getting a lot of bad press and the polls are going against you, you need to do something that says we're moving in a different direction. That's what I mean by a reset. But it doesn't mean a staff shakeup. You know, the replacement of one person as the chief operating officer of the campaign with another one is not going to change anybody's opinion. So you got to do something that's big and grabs the attention of the American people and says this is either a big new policy or a change in tone or direction. And that's a mechanical thing. You've got it. You can't simply say, well, we got bad polls and we're getting bad press, and you got to say, okay, we got to do something different. But that shouldn't obscure.
Not to be the reminder of history, but back in 2016, I can't remember how many campaign managers the president went through as then candidate Trump. It was at least 3 or 4, wasn't it?
Right. But nobody that generally bespeaks controversy inside the campaign, a lack of organization. It doesn't say to the American people, this guy's got it. Oh, interesting. He said something that grabbed my attention, and I agree with that. So, but look, the reset is the least important thing. More importantly, the president has to have an agenda for the second term. No president gets reelected by saying, I've done a good job. You have to be in a place where you say, I've done a good job, and I got more things that I want to do, and those are things that you like. And if you look at the successful reelections in the modern era, the convention speech of Bill Clinton in 1996, George W. Bush in 2004, and Barack Obama in 2012, they all said, here's what I've been doing, but all of them also said, here's the second act. Here's what I want to do in the coming 4 years. And then the third thing that they would do in those speeches is to say, here's a contrast between me and my opponent. And so my point in my column was to say, you got to do a reset, come up with something. But more important than that is the president needs to be ready by the time that he appears at the Republican National Convention the third week of August, on August 27th, to accept the nomination of his party. He has to have a bold agenda that he lays out for a second term and that he can contrast with Joe Biden. And he ought to hold off on a lot of the new stuff that he wants to talk about until the convention, because more people are going to be paying attention at that time than in any other time except the debates. But he does need to begin to contrast with Joe Biden now on big issues. Does that convention
speech look more like the inauguration American Carnage speech, or like a couple of his State of the Union addresses that have garnered even times bipartisan praise?
Well, I think it's more the latter, because I think what people want to hear at that moment is an optimistic view of what can be done. What are the challenges we as a country face, and how are you going to overcome them? What's interesting is there are two different. We've had 3 recent examples. 2 of them are the same, are roughly the same. Clinton in 1996, Bush in 2004. They said, "Here's what I've done. Here's what I want to do, and then I'm going to contrast myself with my opponent." The outlier is Barack Obama in 2012, who starts by going full throat at Mitt Romney and then says in a more fulsome way, here's what I've done and here's what I want to do. But he starts by going at Romney saying, there's a big difference in this campaign, fundamental values, here's what I believe the future of America is based on, the American dream. And Mitt Romney is just a louse and goes at him in hammer and tong in some very tough words. But I think it would be better if he followed the model of Clinton and Bush and started off by saying, here's what I've done, here's what I want to do, and here the contrast follows.
The historical perspective is important and also noteworthy, as you well know. This is the time that the White House and the campaign is starting to think about that very speech and how to set that agenda. Here's how the Biden campaign is looking at things now, about a month out from their convention, 2 months till the Republican convention.
We're seeing massive energy for Biden all across the country. He's currently leading in all of the key battleground states that we're going to have to win the White House in November. We also just outraised the Trump campaign for the second consecutive month. Those numbers coming out last night. We raised $10 million more than Donald Trump did over the last month. So, if that's a measure of enthusiasm, we're lapping the Trump campaign right now.
Between now and the convention speech you talk about, does President Trump need to fire up his base more and turn back in that direction, or take a more conciliatory tone towards the swing voters that, at least in the polling, have moved away from him?
Look, his base is fired up and remains fired up. And let me just say something about the Biden campaign is raising their expectations unnecessarily. Yes, they've outraised President Trump in the last 2 months. And over the last quarter, they raised $10 million more than President Trump. On the other hand, President Trump and the Republican National Committee have $265 million cash on hand, which is more than $100 and some odd million more than Biden and the DNC have. So I know how the Biden campaign wants to feel that, we got great movement, and they have had good movement in the polls, but they ought to be tempering expectations rather than blowing them up, in my opinion. But look, the president's focus ought to be on swing voters. There's got to be on swing voters. The base is energized.
Yep.
It's swing voters that matter. Those are the people who are going to decide the election. The president is. That's why he's dropped in the polls, is because he's dropped with them. Now he needs to build back up with them.
Yeah, and those were the folks that you targeted when you organized and engineered President Bush's reelection in 2004. Karl Rove from Austin, Texas. Enjoy the holiday, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, Leland.